Now, some reels are die-cast aluminum. This one is a little bit higher end, so it's CNC machined out of solid aluminum. Makes it a little bit stronger, a little bit lighter, a little higher quality. But again, there's not a huge difference. If you're just getting started, don't worry about those things so much. Hey everybody, Al Norwicker here with KastKing. The last time we talked about how to pick a fly rod. We talked about lengths, actions, line weights, what each one of those are good for, and hopefully it helped you a little bit in deciding which one of the hundreds and hundreds of different types of fly rods that are available would be just right for you. I thought maybe it would be good to do the same thing concerning fly reels, because there is a huge difference between fly reels. Now, let's start talking about one of the main differences, and that is price. You can buy a fly reel that will function just fine for maybe even under $30, certainly $40 or $50. They might not do some of the things that the more expensive fly reels do, but they'll function just fine. And I think that most of us, when we first start fly fishing, that's probably the kind of reel that we should buy. But let me explain some of the differences when it comes to selecting a fly reel and why you might want to choose one that has more features and maybe is a little bit more expensive. So first of all, a fly reel's main function is a line holding device. This is simply a storage spool for your backing, your fly line, and for your leader. And you notice on this particular one here, you'll see the orange backing material, and I put that on here so that you could clearly see the difference. So we have backing. This is a braided material, usually about 20 to 30 pound strength, braided Dacron or some sort of a braided material. Attached to that is the floating or sinking fly line. And then in front of that, of course, is our leader and or tippet material, what we actually attach the fly to. But regardless of all those things, the fly reel's main purpose is a line holding device. It gives us the ability to retrieve that line by simply turning the handle like on most fishing reels. In this particular case, it's very smooth. They spin very, very easy. So that is really not different with any fly reel. But the differences come in, they start with the materials. So you might have a fly reel that is made out of graphite material. It's very lightweight, very inexpensive. It's molded so that it's not machined out of a one-piece solid block of aluminum like this reel, but it's very functional. Oftentimes, even the spool will be made out of graphite on the lower end reels. And that's just fine. They function great. To take the spool off, there's usually a knob on the outside or maybe just a simple little lever, and you will take that off. So you have a frame and you have the spool that holds the fly line. The frame just holds the spool in place, and it usually contains the drag system. And there's a lot of different kinds of drags. There's a click and pawl style drag. There are disc drags. Some are sealed, some are not sealed. But the drag is probably not the first thing I would look for when you're first beginning on a fly reel, and I'm going to show you why and one of the other features. If you're selecting a fly reel, there's one thing that I'd really like you to make sure you look for, and that is the fact that it has a palming feature. And you'll notice on this reel, on the frame side, I've got the spool in my left hand, frame in the right hand, and the frame isn't all the way around. There's actually an exposed area here and an exposed area here. And that's a very important feature, because when we put this spool back on, now something can happen that I think is really important, whether it's a high-end reel or more of an opening price point reel. A lot of times when I'm fishing, I'll often use keep my drag very, very light. I set it to almost its lightest setting. And the reason for that is, if a fish decides to take off and make a hard, fast initial run, I don't want there to be any hesitancy or stopping. I want it to go very, very smooth because I don't want to break off the very light tippet sections that I often use. But I do want to be able to control that fish, so I actually use the palm of my hand with the drag set to its lightest setting, or almost the lightest setting. Because it's exposed, the frame doesn't go all the way around. Like on this side, it's completely around the outside of the reel, but on the spool side, it's only on the top and the bottom. So now I can actually touch the spool to the palm of my hand, adding a little bit of pressure or adding a lot of pressure to slow that fish down, but I can control that very, very easily and to a very fine amount to make sure that I'm not breaking off those small tippet sections. So really look for that reel that has the palming feature, and to be honest, most reels made today have that. So it's not hard to find. It's something you'll see in almost every reel, but just make sure that the frame isn't a full frame all the way around both sides, and then you'll be able to utilize that palming feature. So let's talk about the drags again. This particular drag is a sealed drag, which means water can't get inside that, sand and dirt can't get inside that. The material that's used for this drag is actually a carbon disc, which means it can be very strong but still very, very smooth. The smoothness of the drag is extremely important because, again, when that first initial run of a fish takes off, if there's any hesitancy of letting that drag turn and take line down with the fish, if it hesitates or sticks a little bit, that's when you lose fish. That's how you break your leaders off. So whatever drag you use, it's quite important that it is very, very smooth. And again, it could be a cork disc drag, it could be a Teflon disc drag, graphite disc drag, felt disc drag. There's a lot of different materials. They all have some advantages and disadvantages. But one thing I really encourage you to do is at the end of the day, when you're done fishing and you've taken all your gear apart, back your drag off to its lightest setting. What you don't want to do is, let's say you were fighting a big fish at the end and maybe you needed a little bit more drag. So you had that drag set pretty tight. You don't want to leave your reel for an extended period of time with those drag discs compressed because it's tightened way down. That can actually damage the drag over time, so you have less drag the next time you go out fishing. So really encourage you, loosen that drag at the end of every day before you put your gear away. Now, the spool material can also be like the frame material. It can either be aluminum, graphite, or a number of other materials. Some reels, like this one, this is actually machined out of a solid block of CNC 6061 aircraft aluminum. Now, some reels are die-cast aluminum. This one is a little bit higher end, so it's CNC machined out of solid aluminum. Makes it a little bit stronger, a little bit lighter, a little higher quality. But again, there's not a huge difference. If you're just getting started, don't worry about those things so much. The most important things, if you're first getting started, find a good reel as a line holding device that has the palming feature, that has some ability to have a drag. You'd like to have that spool be able to come off very easily so that you can start your line, and we're going to show you that a little bit later too in another segment about how we stretch our line before we start fishing, and when we're putting our rod together, we're going to stretch our leader, check for defects, but we'd like to be able to take that spool off very easily. It also makes it much easier to actually change your fly line and maybe replace it if it needs to be replaced at some point. Handle material, a lot of these are plastic, some of them aluminum. Doesn't really matter that much. It's just a taste and a price point difference there. The foot of the reel is quite important. It needs to be very strong. It needs to be firmly attached to the frame of the reel so it doesn't come loose. Most of them are screwed in from the bottom inside to the foot. You'll probably never have to adjust that. It just comes from the factory that way. So for me, I always retrieve with my left hand, okay? You might not be that way. I know just like on spinning reels and bait casting reels, a lot of people like to retrieve with the left, a lot of people like to retrieve with the right. Okay, so today in the industry, the fishing industry, probably about maybe 90% of all fly reels come from the factory set up for a left-hand retrieve. Great, perfect for me, maybe not for you. If you want to change your reel so that you can reel from the right side, it's no problem. Almost every reel you have the ability to change the retrieve direction by simply making a small change inside of either the frame, or in some cases, some reels, you make that change by turning over a one-way clutch on the inside of the spool. But either way, it's quite simple to do. You just have to make that decision. Now, one thing I want to remind you of, if you were to take my fly reel right now, and it's set up as a left-hand retrieve reel, and if you decide you want to use it, but you want to retrieve the other direction, no problem. We can change that just by opening this up and switching that one-way clutch, so now it's set up for right-hand retrieve. However, because it was originally spooled with fly line and backing, with a left-hand retrieve, you've got to take off all of the line, all of the backing, and put it back on now in a right-hand retrieve fashion. Makes it a little bit more difficult if line is already on. If you have a brand new reel that's never had line on it before, doesn't matter. You make a decision at that time. Do I want to reel with my left hand or my right hand? Once it's set up correctly, then you're going to put on your fly line and backing, or backing first, then your fly line, so it reels onto the reel correctly with either a right or left hand retrieve. Now remember, fly line always comes underneath the reel like this and retrieves in a clockwise position in a right hand reel. And on a left hand reel, it's going to come underneath the reel spool and the body, and it's going to retrieve in a counterclockwise position. Okay? Bottom line is, whether you retrieve left or right, the line always comes underneath the reel, not over the top. So right hand side is going to come underneath the reel and over the top in a clockwise position. So I hope this discussion about picking a good fly reel has helped you a little bit. Whether you're going to spend $30 or $300 or even more on a fly reel, there's certainly a fly reel out there for you. But look for those key features. You know, really, it's a line holding device more than anything. But the palming feature is really, really important. And a bonus would be a really nice, smooth, solid drag system. Either way, whatever you do, just go fishing. Fly fishing is an incredible sport. It's really a sport of a lifetime. It's a beautiful day out here. We're going to have a blast. And I wish you were here with me, to be honest. It's a great day here in Colorado. And I'm Al Norliker for KastKing. I hope to see you on the water really soon.